The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jenn Durrell.
Well, hello to all our weirdos and weirdettes. Thank you for joining us on Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. We have a heck of a show for you tonight. Our guest is one of my all-time favorites. We've had him on before, but before we bring him on, I'd just like to say, how are you doing, baby? What's happening in the wonderful planet Jenn?
Currently, I have a dog that won't stop barking.
I can hear you.
But other than that, I've been doing pretty good. Got cooler here in Missouri. So how's it up in Wisconsin?
We got snow here today.
Oh,
Yes.
really? That's nice.
Any paranormal stories for me? I haven't talked to you since last week's show.
Yeah. My dog is still barking. Nothing too much.
Okay.
I've been working so much at the other place I work at, so I haven't been around it too much. No fun stories today.
Okay. I can let you mute your microphone
Yes.
again then.
It needs to
So,
be muted.
I don't have it, and you would normally ask me how my week was. I have some exciting news. I'm not really ready to drop yet, but I've been kicking around the idea of this documentary for a while, and it's so early in development stages that I don't even want to call it development. But this week, I had a wonderful lead and something opened up for me. So if one more thing slots into place that I really need to slot into place, I think this documentary will go ahead, and it's in the type of space that we talk about. It's in the weird space. It's something nobody's done. There's so many documentaries which cover the same ground again and again. Nobody's done this. So I am so excited, and if it gets a little bit closer, if the next thing slots into place, I think I'll be confident enough to announce that it's properly at least in development. So I'm excited about that. But I can still see poor Jen's like nodding because her dog is losing its mind in the background, that naughty Truman. Anyway, we can just roll straight into it because I'm so excited, as I mentioned. Tonight's guest has worked as a dive master, machinist, and electrical engineer on projects in the United States, Red China, and Bermuda. He's been an independent UFO researcher since 1969 to 1998, at which point Walt Andrus, founder of MUFON, asked him to become a section director for that organization. Later, he would go on to be assistant state director for Missouri MUFON. He then co-founded the MUFON dive team with Debbie Ziegelmeyer and joined Ted Phillips as his assistant in 2006 and later became part of Ted's SIU team. He assisted Phillips on his Marley Woods project and his Tetra Mountain Moonshaft project. He has recently featured on the hit TV series UFO Witness with Ben Hansen and Melissa Tittl at Marley Woods. We had Melissa on. I think she was the first guest we had on when we moved to. No, she was the first or second guest we had on the show when we moved to Untold Radio Network. So people can go back and check that if they go back into the archives of the show. It was a great episode. She was a fantastic guest. And tonight's guest, he's also been on a bunch of other high-profile shows. Recently, for example, he was on Coast to Coast AM. At any rate, I'm so delighted to welcome back to Talking Weird one of our all-time favorite guests, ThomasMFerrario.
Good to be here back. It really is. And I'm so glad to be with you guys again. And got a lot to share tonight. And it's just kind of a bittersweet. I will tell you, I just lost a close friend, Bruce Whitteman, which was one of the first state directors for MUFON in Missouri. And he passed away and was a close friend of mine. And him and I in ufology were part of things in disclosure that I'll go into if we have time, but it's just good to be here and like to share what we've done lately.
Oh, it's great to have you here. I've been following a number of your things. Maybe we've got so much to cover tonight, and you're one of those guests I get excited when you come on, because I really believe you have a finger on the real pulse of what's going on. You're one of those people in ufology that I think gets it. I'm not sure how many people do, to be honest. I don't think many do. You do. But before we go to some of the revelations I think we're going to hit tonight, tell us a little bit about the experience of working on UFO Witness. It was a great episode.
Yeah, it really was. And Ben and Melissa are so great to work with. And the whole crew that we dealt with out there was just top notch, and they were just great people. And but I will tell you that Ben and Melissa, from the get-go out at Marley, when they entered the property, they actually felt like a presence. And from the time Melissa and Ben and Melissa have the habit of synchronizing their watches, and Melissa just got a new watch, and not a cheap watch, I might add. And they drove onto the property, and that was the start of equipment failures. She told Ben that her wristwatch had quit completely, dead. And then when they got on the property, we had typical battery packs drain. And I'll just, go into, before we even shot or got out with Ben and Melissa at the place, I spent a day with a property owner at Site 2 and 3, which was what very great gentleman, close friend of mine, man in his 80s, good health. And he called me up a week before we were going to shoot. He said, well, Tom, he said, just so you know, he said, the water tank at the well blew out on Site 2 and 3. We won't have running water, no restrooms for anybody. And I said, well, that's okay. And then the next day he called me back and he said, well, unusually there was a rain like he'd not seen before out there, and there's dirt roads we dealt with. It virtually almost made the roads impassable, almost washed the roads out. And he asked me if I still wanted to get the crew and try to do it. And I said, well, yeah, I think we will. We'll try. And so it was just a labor even getting vehicles in and out of there, I will tell you, that night. So from the get-go, there's an intelligence out there, I will tell you, a presence that was letting us know in such non-direct ways, indirect ways, that it really didn't like the idea that we brought strangers out there, as the early skinwalker people knew. And but it just was a struggle, and it didn't get any better as we went on in the evening, I will tell you. But when we started shooting, we got out, the property owner was so looking forward to being with us. He got tired. He just felt like he had to go. He had to leave us. He couldn't take part in it, which was a big disappointment. And he left. And then, of course, Ben and Melissa and I got out there, and we were about to start filming, and we did get this on camera. And I told Ben and Melissa 3 to 4 times out there and on camera, as if you watch the episode, that it was the Nordics in the Cube episode on UFO Witness. I told him, I said, I mean this with all my heart, guys. I feel that we're being monitored. It's monitoring us right now. It knows we're out here. And Ben and Melissa picked up on this, because my hearing is extremely bad. Too many years in a machine shop and such. But Melissa stopped. She touched Ben and she looked at me, and I said, what's wrong? And Melissa said, and this is on the episode too, she said, don't you guys notice that all the insects, the sounds of the night, it just went dead? I mean, and you actually felt like any minute anything could happen. And she kind of got upset over that. And so we did film some more. And Ben, that night we got up. He had a state-of-the-art thermal imaging unit. We got up and up in a deer stand. He did pick up, he caught something, and he told me, he said, I don't know, Tom, if that's an animal I got or what that is. And from the experience with the light balls, I said, well, Ben, that looks spherical and it's off the ground. And he said, oh, you're right. And we started pulling in on this thing, and I had night vision. and the crew we couldn't see it with night vision or naked eye. We could only see this through the thermal imaging unit. And he got on the crew and actually had a laser pointer, directed them where this object was. And as he's directing them to it, his several $1,000 piece of thermal imaging unit just completely shut off, went dead. And I asked him, I said, has it got a habit of doing that, Ben? He said, absolutely. It's never done that. And it came back on. He caught it for a brief instant and it was gone. And it made me, over the years, had we had that piece of equipment out there, how many times could we have had a window? We actually felt that we caught this thing with the thermal imaging, the temperature differential coming in and out of the portal or the dimensional boundary. And had we had that piece of equipment over the years, what might we have caught over the years? And to be a precursor to seeing it with a naked eye. So that was very telling, I will tell you. But and it went on from there. You know, we had experiences. I had I always, and Ted always felt that it was microwave radiation was the guy that was doing the damage to people and that out there, livestock. I had a new piece of equipment that was totally fixed on microwave spectrum, and 3 times out in the middle of a field, you know, in the middle of the night, no power lines, nothing around. This thing had visual cues and audible cues, and it went from green, yellow to red, and the audible cues went off into the danger zone for really, luckily, only a minute or two. And so I actually feel that the intelligence that was out there was letting me know, and I told Ben and Melissa this, that it knew we were there, and it was letting me know because some of the people out there, myself included, had been damaged, physically damaged with microwave energy. And I think it was letting us know it was there, it was still there, and what its capabilities could do again. So it was just an incredible experience, I will tell you. And the other thing, you know, that after the crew left that night, I made sure I hung around a little bit. I don't get out there as often as I should. And I wanted to make sure for the property owner, all the lights were turned off in the cabin, all the doors were locked. So I made the rounds before I left, and I was the last one. And this is 1,200 acre piece of property on a dirt road, off a gravel road, off a small paved road in the middle of nowhere, gated. No one could have been in there. And I know no one was. And a couple weeks later, I found out from the property owner. He said, well, he told me, he said, Tom, you know, when I got out there the next morning, he felt better and he went out. He said, you know, you guys left the property, the doors open on the cabin and all the lights on. So I informed him that, no, I was the last one out there, and you know me, they were locked in the lights, but that's not unusual. That's what goes on, the poltergeist type activity. So there again, I really feel like the intelligence out there was letting us know who was in charge.
That's the fascinating thing with Marley Woods. It's one of those window areas which really tends to suggest that so much of this phenomena is interrelated, that you get weird cryptids there, you get balls of light, you get UFO phenomena, you get poltergeist activity. It really tends to be a perfect example of something that shatters that very mundane extraterrestrial hypothesis, I think.
Yes. And you know, the thing that I'm getting now, I'm very good friends, and she's almost like my sister, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, the state director of MUFON in Missouri, and she's actually on the board of MUFON. And her and I founded the MUFON dive team together many years ago. And but Debbie's informing me and other people, and there's another state director and some people overseas that I know that we worked on the Moonshaft project. Of course, I know you know of, and we were going to do that in Slovakia. And of course, again, the war broke out. But I'm finding out not only statewide other locations in the States and some overseas. And I'll go into that, what my beliefs are, why this is happening. But there are more hot spots like Marley Woods happening. And even in Missouri, I know now of 3 other locations in Missouri MUFON's dealing with that are approaching the activity of Marley Woods. Now, that never happened before, I will tell you. And it's happening in other states. It's happening overseas. And I truly believe the dimensional boundaries are weakening, and this stuff is coming across. And I'll go into that too later on if we have time. But it is occurring more frequently now. And you can, in the media, I know you guys sense that too. You know, it's
yeah. Let's jump into something. Use this as a bounce board. Today, so much of the mainstream attention still seems to be the type of extraterrestrial hypothesis. Like when people show Tic Tac videos and it's still contextualized in many ways the same way it was in the 1950s. These might be visitors from elsewhere, and maybe the US government knows. Like the narrative, that main narrative hasn't changed, and it almost seems to ignore the type of high strangeness that you're talking about at Marley Woods and at other places. What do you think's going on at a higher intelligence level? Do you think they're actually conscious of it not being as easy to explain as perhaps the media makes it out to be, or do you think they're as oblivious as perhaps the media are? What do you think's going on with the intelligence agencies and everything else?
I will tell you, for years I've had people I worked with. And, you know, besides Ted Phillips, and Ted worked with Alan Hynek, and Alan led Ted to believe I was like Ted in the beginning. I was the nuts and bolts man. That's where I was happy. Structured craft is all I wanted to do. If you brought in the paranormal or a cryptid sighting, Bigfoot, I frankly, I wouldn't even cover that case. I wouldn't investigate it or be part of it. But as Ted working with Alan Hynek, and they actually had a period where they broke up with one another over this. But and like Ted said, Alan, and of course we worked with Jacques Vallée out at Marley. You know, we had that presence, and Douglas Trumbull and others. The input these people had far above my pay grade, and so many others we worked with. Stanton Freeman was a friend of Ted's we worked with, and I worked with a gentleman, Ray Stanford, and I met, and I will tell you, I spent a couple of days. She spent time with a lecture through a friend of mine, Bruce Whitteman in St. Louis, Dr. Carol Rosen. I don't know, you probably know of her, which was von Braun, the rocket scientist assistant. And speaking with all these people, and my background and my other, and I'll get into those areas, I'm more prepared now to speak about things that I wasn't ever going to speak about. But I feel the time now, we're just in that time period, and the time is right. But I will go into that. There's absolutely an intelligence. And if I learn one thing working with all these people is, and believe me, a lot of ufologists throw rocks at me and don't want to go there. But as even Jacques Vallée says, this is all interdimensional. It's not interplanetary. Now, when you go through the interplanetary part, the interdimensional realm, of course you can go interplanetary, and it's a little bit, there's a discrepancy there, that a fine line that people don't understand. But I will tell you, Stanton Freeman was a good friend of mine, and when he explained this to me, it broke my heart. I was a Star Trek fan when I was young, and I loved the idea of the ships, you know, warp speed and light speed. And Stan told me one day, he said, well, Tom, that's never going to happen like that. He said, the physics are wrong in this dimension. And I said, well, what do you mean, Stan? And he said, well, look at it this way. He said, to attain light speed of a solid object the size of a pea would take the combined energy output of the Earth for 100 years. Now, that's just not practical, is it? And I had to agree with him, you know, and I'm not going to argue with a nuclear physicist about that. So he opened my eyes to that, you know, that it's just the reality of the matter. That now, when I say interdimensional, and a lot of, again, ufologists don't like to go there. I truly believe, from dealing with this intelligence and the people I know that have, this is interdimensional. It has an intelligence that's there. And if I had to put my finger on it, from people far above my pay grade again, and I have had good friends in my background that were theologians, I do believe this is more of the spiritual nature. And I will tell you that what comes across has the ability, as Jacques Vallée says, and I just quickly, a little thing, he drummed into us, was that the phenomena has the ability to create a distortion of the sense of reality and substitute it with artificial sensations for the real ones. Now, what people like him, and we proved in Marley, was that this stuff would be whatever you wanted it to be. It was, as the Native Americans call it, the tricksters. If they wanted to appear as aliens, they would be little grays. If they wanted to appear as cryptids, they would. And when you get into the cryptids, that's another science in itself. And when this stuff comes across, let me tell you, it's as real in flesh. It leaves physical traces, just like we do on the ground. We experienced it, at Marley. We took samples, hair samples, did plaster cast of these things, come back, no known match in DNA in microscopy. So when it's here, it's as real as you and I in the form it takes. It's Skinwalker deals with it in the legend of Skinwalker. So there is that aspect of it. I will tell you that it is real when it's here in what form it takes. And it's much more, and as Ted found out from working with Dr. Alan Hynek, that it's not as simplistic as little green guys coming here from Alpha Centauri. So, and I can go into much more of that, but, and there again, if I have to put my money on any line of thought or anybody I've worked with, I've just learned that this is what's happening.
I think everything you said then makes so much more sense than standard ETH explanations. And what I loved about what you were talking about then is the recognition that perhaps it's not physical elsewhere, but when it comes here, it becomes physical. I think we've had a real problem with the way we think in modernity about physical trace evidence. So people say, well, there's footprints. It must be a physical ape man. It must live in the woods. Excuse me. Or people will say, well, there's flying saucer evidence of landing pads. It must be metallic craft from outer space. But historically, spiritually, people in all kinds of traditions have understood that when the gods or the fairies or the things from elsewhere interact with us, they have this physical impact upon our reality. And interestingly, even ghost hunting and specter hunting has long had a tradition of accepting that these things have physical interactions with our physical reality. Old ghost hunters used to sprinkle talcum powder on the floor to find footprints. So there's been a long history of understanding that wherever these things come from, when they're here, they're physical. So I think it's about time that we are able to do what you just did, to open our mind and think, well, just because it's physical some of the time doesn't mean it has to physically exist with us all of the time.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And, it just, with the cryptids we experienced out there, like 400-pound sloth, polar bear / type animals, 400-pound, the weight was estimated as, leaving tracks, leaving 16-inch white long hairs, little gray guys, what's known as the gray seen out there, and speaking different languages. And of course, the skinwalkers type entities we had out there, the hooded figures seen, just like Skinwalker had in common with us. And we had people, we worked with it from Skinwalker in the beginning out there with us. And but we had so many commonalities out there with Skinwalker. And this stuff comes across, and it's now, do we think there's a living, breeding population of these things out there, Marley? We know there's not. When they're not there, they're not there. But it gets into the much more, I will tell you, spiritual realm. And it's just, I've had the fortune, and that'll lead into where I'd like to go tonight too, about the false flag scenario. That's another thing I'll take away. But you know, just getting back to Marley just briefly, you know, we shot that with Ben and Melissa out there, and of course, after we did that, and I got notified a couple weeks later that the property owner, which was a very close friend of mine, had a stroke and passed away on the property. And so the family felt, with everything that had occurred, they said, Tom, we just want to shut it down for now. We don't want anybody in there but you. We don't want to stir up anything anymore. And we just feel like right now, site 2 and 3 is off bounds for anything. So I had to respect their wishes, of course, and I agreed with them to a certain extent. And but then the evening that episode aired with Ben on UFO Witness, 10:30 at night, the property owner, which over the years, and I will tell you, there's been a competition between Site 1 property owner and Site 2 and 3 that, well, I've had more stuff go on, and no, I had more stuff, you know, that kind of rivalry. So the property owner at Site 1 called me and said, I watched the show, Tom. I liked it. I'd like to do some out here now in Site 1, which he was closed about for a while. And I said, well, are you sure you want to do this? Are you absolutely sure? He said, yes, absolutely. He said, you know, you guys stayed on my property. The office was out here. You know how much happens out here. I'd like to go forward and do something like that out here. And I said, well, if you're sure about this, and absolute, well, I'll see what I can do. So just as a fluke, and I don't believe it was an accident, the new people, and I'm very good friends with one of the producers at Skinwalker, and I know I speak with a property owner out there now. They were going to start a new show and do some episodes out at Site 1 at Marley. And they asked me if it was possible. And so I said, well, I think there's a good chance now. And let me get back to the property owner and work this out. So I did. He was on board with it. So they made plans and we had set it up. And 2 weeks before we were due to start shooting, the property owner at Site 1 called me and said, Tom, it's off. It's all off. I'm not going to do anything. Damn. And I said, now you realize we set this up and you were okay with this, and these people have gone on, you know, out of their way and he said, I know, and I'm sorry, and I don't want to do this to you, but he said, absolutely nothing is ever going to be out here except you and a couple of your team members have been out here before. Now, I questioned him. I spent 2 hours on the phone with a man trying to get to the bottom of this. He said, well, my family's afraid. They don't want to do anything. They're afraid that besides the people maybe trying to get on the property, you know, if it gets known again, gets in the public view, we don't want anybody to get hurt out here. And my family doesn't want anybody to get hurt anymore. So I have my own ideas of what changed his mind, what happened out there. And so anyway, you can imagine the spot that put me in.
Gosh.
And it was a great letdown, I would tell you. And so that took place, and that's where we stand right now. And as of now, as far as filming and strangers out there on both sites, it's just not going to happen right now. And I understand why. And but like I said, the activity is growing out there and in other sites. So
yeah, it's interesting, this acceleration that you mentioned. It's also interesting that you suggested that it might be spiritual. I'm very sympathetic to that idea as well. And when we look at the history of it, or when we look at the type of experiences you're talking about, of people getting hurt, of a trickster element, of this type of deception, it doesn't sound like it's good spiritual. You know, I'm not sure what your take is, but
no, it's not. It really isn't. And I will tell you that, you know, my youth, and it's just some of the things that have come my way, and I believe it was an accident. As a young boy, I had a close friend and a friend of mine, and I grew up, I will say, a Catholic, in a Catholic school. I fell away from the church completely, believe me, and I never expected to be here, be saying what I'm going to say, but I had a friend, his name was Father Ildefonse, which him and another friend of mine, and I did follow Father Malachi Martin. I know you're aware of him, his work with Art Bell Show.
Absolutely.
And there was another gentleman, Reverend John Schroeder, which was in St. Louis, Missouri, part of the original MUFON. And he was a great researcher in ufology and a very spiritual man. And between these people and another individual, I wish I could name, I can't, but I will tell you that the one individual, actually, he had known three languages. He had known Koine Greek, Aramaic, and I believe ancient Hebrew. And he was a seminary student, and his family was wealthy, sent him to Rome. And he worked actually in the Vatican, down below the Vatican, deciphering. They had a fungus problem, destroying manuscripts. And I will tell you at this point that our government had learned compartmentalization and worked with the church in the early days of our government. And they learned so much how to keep secrets. And believe me, and I will tell you, even to this day, there are branches of our government that are in very close touch with the Vatican, which and there are people that don't like that fact known, believe me. But as he told me, he said they brought people in, seminary students. They got some of these manuscripts out. They would do a paragraph or a page, and out they would go. They bring in another seminary. So no one individual had the big picture of what was going on. And of course, some of these individuals got together for a beer later in places, and they would speak about and they started putting two and two together. And some of these people, as Father Malachi Martin had, of course, he knew a lot of what was going on, knew it all, assisting the popes. And I will tell you that a lot of the ufology that is dealt as being satanic or being in the religious nature is what a lot of these manuscripts predicted what's going on now, and what is actually happening in ufology. And I will tell you, I asked some of these gentlemen questions, and it blew my mind away. And in the beginning, I wasn't prepared for this, as Ted wasn't, believe me, and a lot of these people. But they led me to believe that this is all part of an event. And then getting into a woman I knew from St. Louis, Missouri, Dr. Carol Rosen, that Bruce Woodman had for a conference, and her and I spoke a long time about von Braun, actually, and you can go get the records of this. Von Braun predicted that, always talked about a false flag event that would come. And she went into that in such detail, it just blew me away. And at the time, I wasn't very receptive of it. I should have been. I am now. I've got it from 4 different sources, exactly what he said. And the theologians I've got a lot of this from the friends I've had. And so the chances of this all just being a coincidence, I don't believe in coincidence, So I will tell you that, what they told me, and every one of them chimed in the same basic structure of the false flag event, that at some point there was going to be an event in mankind. And I actually, from watching the news and different things, I don't think we're too far from that event. But there's going to be an event where mankind is going to go down, and it's going to be at its worst. And this intelligence, what some are going to call, they're going to come as aliens, and they're not even honest about that. They're not. They're going to come with all the answers, the technologies to save mankind. And this could happen as a landing event, and it could simply happen as an event where a lot of these people, I will tell you, that have been working in our research laboratories, electronics fields, working with us, briefing, bringing in, and everything from circuitry, printed circuits, to all kind of technologies. And they're going to come either as just coming out, they've been here, their presence have been here all along, and they're going to come out of the woodwork, or it's going to be a landing event, or a combination of all of the above. And it's their let me just tell you, their motivation is not for our welfare. It's for it serves their own purpose, and it's not our welfare. And I've met individuals that over the years, believe me, and I can't believe some of the people I've met, and I've met some that even met Rod Serling, and he made a very good movie. Him, and here again, he's one of the producers that was promised government footage, film footage. He produced a movie called UFOs It Has Begun. And I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage every one of your listeners to get that movie, watch it. He was promised footage, actual of a disc from the government and other proof. He started production, and at the last minute, of course, like so many times, they pulled back. They didn't give him the information and the photographs. And he went on then and produced a movie, which I still think is an outstanding documentary. Burgess Meredith narrates it, and it's just an outstanding documentary. But then, as a final kind of a thumb in the eye of the government to get even with what he knew and couldn't prove, he filmed an episode on his, the Twilight Zone. And I don't know if you've ever seen the episode called To Serve Mankind, or To Serve Man. And you know what that entails. It's exactly the false flag scenario. The aliens come to benefit man. They bring technologies, they increase the food, free energy, just every, and then, of course, the scientist assistant at the end, there's a classic scene where he's going on their saucer to leave for a trip vacation, and they couldn't decipher the language. And at the end, she says, well, to serve man is not for our benefit. It's a cookbook.
Right.
So I'm not saying that's the motivation in that the false flag scenario, but it's not far off, I will tell you. And so there is a lot of that, and and let me just tell you, and ufologists, even to this day, there's more coming around to this. They feel they know the answers. They feel they know. I mean, I've gone with lectures, Bruce Whitman had individuals. I mean, they go into the science of the different aliens, their culture, their family structure and all this. And I mean, it's just facts that are totally fictitious and they're not real. Now, these people may be picking up on things, again, that they're meant to pick up on, because this, I will tell you, this intelligence, it has a unique capability of, it can make you believe things you see and what they show you as fact. And at that moment, time in history, it is fact. So, but I'll just say their welfare is not their motivation for what's going to come. And there again, if I had to put my finger, trust and belief in anybody, I just got to put it with the people I worked with. I've got it from so many different, avenues and walks of life, that I just truly believe that's what's going on.
It almost sounds like what you're suggesting, or a way that it could be taken, is that it's almost a double-barreled issue. There's a false flag deception, but it rings apocalyptically. It rings like end times, what we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I don't like to go there. But, I'm not the one that wrote the book or the story. I just got to report on what I've been a part of and what I believe. And believe me, like I said, this is the farthest thing from what I thought I would ever be speaking of. And And believe me, I did not want to speak of this till I felt, with things going on and people, I've been losing a lot of friends that have known this, and I just feel that it's just my place in time that I've got to speak about this stuff and feel like, if this never occurs, so be it. But if I can just put that question and doubt in somebody's mind when this goes down, I heard this guy one time talk about something like this. Maybe I shouldn't just fall for this maybe I should question just a little. If I can put that seed of doubt in somebody's mind at the right time, I'll feel like I did some good out of what I've learned over the years.
There seems to be so much deceit, both from the phenomenon, whatever it is, and
Yes.
also from, I suppose, the powers that be. And so I'm kind of trapped when I look at it. I don't think I'm being told the truth by either the phenomenon, and I mean, I'm not having any context with the phenomenon, but when I hear a story of somebody's experience with it, I often think I'm not doubting the witness, but I'm doubting what they've actually seen is what it's presenting itself as. And then I also doubt any official intelligence announcement or media release involving Tic Tacs or involving DoD study groups, or the whole thing seems so loaded with deception that it's almost impossible to take any of this stuff at face value.
It truly is. And the question I had in my mind for so many years, and when I asked these individuals, the thing that always just did not make sense to me is the deeper you get into this, in ufology, you find out about so many, and this was I was a nuts and bolts guy with the saucers like Ted was. There were so many crashes of disc all over the world, Roswell. And believe me, Roswell happened. Ted was brought in, he handled the wreckage, it was verified, but there's so many. I mean, I was actually in Aztec, New Mexico with Stan Freeman and Ted, and we went over the case that Aztec crash. Cape Girardeau, Missouri, of course, that happened. And I believe I can come up with there's 17 different crashes, that I know of, and I know there's more. And my problem with that was always, and I asked these individuals, if this technology is so great, what is the purpose, or how can this be happening? All these crashes, it doesn't make sense. And I had it explained to me as if I was a child. And they said, well, Tom, think of it like this. These structured craft that do come across, and believe me, there are structured craft coming across. They use this medium. Some of the cryptids and that, of course, have the ability to cross the interdimensional boundary wherever they are. But there are structured craft that come across. And I asked, well, why do these things crash all the time? And they explained it to me as if I was a child, and it made so much perfect sense I'd never thought of. They said, well, Tom, these things come across. They don't have the authority to be here. And he said, that being said, look at it this way. What happens when a young man steals a vehicle? He doesn't have the capability maybe to drive that car. He's being chased by the police. He doesn't have the capability. He's being chased. What always results in the end? And I said, well, they crashed the car. And he said, you got it. He goes, a lot of times what comes across the boundaries with structured craft doesn't have the authority to be here, and they are being pursued in many ways. That's the only thing in all my years that just in any way would explain this, how this could happen. So it's not a result of the technology. It's the way the technology is being used and how it's being used. So that's something that just rang a bell with me, and I've held on to that now all these years.
I should throw it to Jen for a moment. Do you have any comments on this, Jen, or any questions for Thomas? I think you're muted. I can't hear you. No, disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Trouble. I'll have to. She'll
I think they
fiddle.
meant that for me. They were trying to shut me
Yeah,
up.
maybe they try to turn you off, and the powers that be they hit Jen's microphone. No, it's still not working.
That happens a lot, I'll tell
Oh my
you.
goodness, tech issues out there. Normally this only happens when we talk about the fair folk or the fairies, but tonight it's happening because we're talking about other. Maybe it's all related anyway. Who knows? But I'm fascinated with all of these things. Of course, I'm very suspicious of, as I said, any traditional UFO reality. Now I can see your mute sign, Jen, so maybe if you unmute now it'll work. Is it going to work now? No, it's still not working. But as far as UFO crashes, I often wonder if a lot of that isn't spin, if a lot of that isn't Benowitz style operations, the type of stuff that was pulled on Paul Benowitz. There you go. I can hear some coughing, so we have Jen. So I'll throw it to you now. I'm glad that you fixed that.
Yeah. That's actually something I was wanting to talk about because I'm having problems this whole time with Truman has been going crazy, my dog. I don't know what he's barking at. And I've had problems with audio. So we had mentioned earlier, there might be some issues with that before we started the live. So, but I do have some questions though about Marley Woods. Since you've been investigating there for such a long time, is there something you figured out about the location? What's underneath it? Is there some material or that's might be attracting that?
Yeah, that drove Ted crazy for so many years. He looked at the topography, he looked at the geology. We looked at the location, of course, ley lines. We explored caves there are no caves, openings at Marley. We feel we found some cave complexes where caves possibly run under Marley, large caves near Marley, but we found nothing, had no readings, strange readings in those caves. So it drove Ted crazy. He could not find any one thing that set Marley apart from anywhere else in Missouri. But there again, as I said, I'm being aware of now that there's places growing. I believe the dimensional boundaries are weakening, which is all part of this. And I've been aware, 3 sites, almost coming up to the level of activity at Marley Woods now in Missouri, which never happened.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just now I believe it's more of the time that we live in than the particular real estate. I really do. And but no, we could never. It just we even went in farm ponds. We just could not. We had agriglyphs, crop circles laid down, and couldn't find anything. But it happens.
Yeah. Well, I've been investigating a location in Missouri too. So it has caves underneath it. So Missouri is the cave state. So
yes,
I was just kind of wondered if, Marley Woods had that same type of makeup too with the location. And I've encountered some odd things too, as kind of tricksters and as well. But it likes to follow me back to my house, and I've seen things.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious a little more to know more about.
You just said something about the trickster.
Yes.
I've got a YouTube channel and all of it. I just encourage anybody to go there. All the videos, little short movies are there free to watch. And I did an interview with Jacques Vallée after Ted passed away. It's on there. And Jacques speaks about the trickster when Douglas Trumbull was out there, and he engineered this very expensive piece of camera equipment that was, motion activated, and put this thing in the log cabin. It was bad weather out. He didn't want to expose it that night, so we put it in a log cabin, and Jacques was there, and Douglas placed this heavy tripod, weighed about 80 pounds, piece of equipment, locked the tripod. We left that room. The property owner locked the door, had the only key. The next morning, we went into the cabin. The property owner came, and Douglas, of course, was first one. He wanted to check the camera. and we were not in the room at the time, and I can't use the language that Douglas used, but he said, "Who's messing with me here?" And Jock went in there. We all went in there, and Jock he said, "Well, Douglas, I don't think anyone's messing with you." But the camera had been turned 30 degrees away from the window physically on a locked tripod in a locked cabin. Now, what does that? There you have that paranormal, that trickster mentality. And then we worked with people from Skinwalker, and we had occurrences, and they did the same thing on a table. And now this will sound boring as heck again, but they had objects like a deck of playing cards or car keys. They put 3 high-speed cameras on the tabletop, focused on the tabletop, where these things had a habit of moving their positions. Ooh. Now, this was another way they proved the dimensional aspect of this, because with high-speed cameras that were well capable of freezing a bullet in a projectile in midair, and these things, the objects would move from point A, B, C around the table, never be caught in motion, but yet they would be caught in moving positions. Now, that's not possible unless you enter into the dimensional aspect of this. And what they truly believe is these things are morphing in and out dimensionally and reappearing in these locations. And that can explain so much of the paranormal world you hear, and other, things that happen. So there is, when people say, well, there's no evidence to anything, believe me, there's a lot of evidence to all this. If you care to take the time and find it and look. So, but that's just one instance of, like you mentioned, the tricksters. So, how do you explain that?
I don't know.
But there is an intelligence behind it. And I will tell you, out in Marley, a good portion of the older people out there, they developed a unique ability when this stuff would start. We'd get into hot spots when a lot of occurrences would happen. It seemed like some of the older people had the ability to sense this. Yeah. Now, a large portion of them would lock themselves in their house, and they just told us they thought it was demonic. Yeah. And, so there is that from their background,
Right.
But it happens. And it's part of the high strangeness that we experienced out there, and their experience, I will tell you, out at Skinwalker now. 2 things, that commonalities they have and they're finding with a new property owner is microwave energy seems to be the culprit, which we did. And, they've even brought out some religious people and had some success with this. They brought a rabbi out there that did, some prayers, and they had some great, developments out there that they found through this. And so, but the commonalities between Skinwalker and us, and I believe other places now around the world, it's all the same intelligence. It's all dimensionally based. And so that's just what I truly believe is going on.
Yeah. I've had the word elemental and Nephilim pop up a lot in my investigations. So I find that very intriguing. So again, that can, Nephilim is biblical in a way, yes. Right? The Watchers. And the Watchers.
And the Nephilim, as you said there, of course, this, but in the beginning, when I started interjecting the Bigfoot, and we had some around Marley, and a lot of the hair samples that are taken around the world and in this country, as you know, they used to throw this out, thought it was contamination, but they'd always come back with the hair samples and the DNA work as having human DNA. Now, they don't throw that out anymore. They're accepting that. Now, that absolutely falls in with the Nephilim, as you know. That explains this. That is the remnants that And there again, the interdimensional boundaries that these things can come in and out of at will. And as the Native Americans said, they were the ghost of the woods. They could be beside you 1 minute and gone. If they don't want to be seen, they won't be seen. But you're absolutely right on that. That is actually, that explains the human DNA that's taken with these, and they used something they used to throw out, and they don't throw it out anymore though. The true researchers don't. So
yeah.
This acceleration you mentioned, the idea that things are coming through more rapidly or more locations are being haunted by things. Do you think it's part of some type of cosmic or prophetic timetable, or do you think it's because people are having more of an interest in this and so things are coming through because we notice them? Or what's your take? Why do you think this acceleration now?
Well, I purposely, here again, I can only draw upon what I personally believe and know. And believe me, like I said, a lot of ufologists don't want to go there, but I truly believe that it is all biblical. And I do believe that all this occurring now is all part of this false flag scenario that's going to take place. And they're going to come for our benefit and to benefit mankind. And that is not their motivation. I really believe that with everything I've seen now and people I've talked to. And there again, as you speak about the Nephilim, and if you get into, and some of the theologians that I've known, if you get into the ancient texts, if you get into the Apocrypha, and the book of Enoch, which are books that were taken out by the church and different religious organizations, knowledge is power, and they don't want to relinquish any part of that power. So by taking certain books out, the Apocrypha and the book of Enoch and others, I will tell you that they like to hold on to the answers that are there. And it's just unbelievable, where this will take you. And I thought I knew a little bit about the Bible, but I got away from it. But when I started, these gentlemen that knew the ancient text and read it, and they tell me some of what they deciphered, and it's just, if you get into, there's a book called the Strong's Concordance that takes the Bible apart literally. I feel I knew nothing of it, and I look at the Bible actually as the most wonderful book of documentation that could not have been written just by man. I believe it's an interdimensional book. I really do. And it could not, in the time it was written, the wisdom in it, and it just could not have been done by the civilization at that time. To this day, so much of it is, unlike a lot think, it is accurate. So now that, believe me, there's a lot of people that don't like you to go there. But as I said in the beginning, I will tell you from people I've known, and this goes back to my days with Bruce Whitteman, and I can just touch upon that if you like, but I will tell you there's branches of our government that still work very close, with the Vatican. And there's a lot of people that don't want that known. But it goes on. And, if I had to go to one place on earth to prove and explain what's going on, I would go with some of my friends back down in the catacombs in the Vatican with those documents, because that's where it's at. But
You're always such a fascinating person to talk to, Tom. Is there any, before we get you to mention where people can watch what you've been up to, is there any parting words you have for our audience, any warning or any suggestions or anything you think they should be paying attention to or keeping their eye out for?
The thing I like to tell people, especially people that get in the field, UFO research, and even the paranormal, is know what you're dealing with. And here again, I truly believe this, that like I said, it spoke about the individuals that come across don't have the authority to be here. We have the authority to be on this side. And in the knowing that, we have the authority over these entities and this intelligence. Now, they don't want you to believe that. They want you to believe otherwise, that they have the power over you and that they have the authority over you. By you knowing that you have the authority, you're the ones that are supposed to be on this side. That gives you all the power in the world. Now, does that mean they can't harm you physically with their technologies and that? No, I mean, they can. Absolutely. We had that in Marley, and other individuals are harmed. But when you're dealing with these people, this intelligence, everything you see, always question what you're seeing. Don't take anything as a truth. You know, if they tell you if they're from Alpha Centauri and they back it up with whatever technology, don't take that as gospel. I mean, because it's just not the way it is. They have that ability to trick you, you know, and but just to go into it with an open mind and question everything is my advice to everybody, and know that you have the authority over this stuff. So, but if you give it away or you don't use it, they will work you and they will use you and make you do whatever they want. So it's a double-edged sword, I will tell you.
That's some fantastic advice.
Yeah.
You're always
agree.
dead on, Tom. How do people find out what you're up to? Like, how can they watch some of the videos you were talking about before, and how do they track the other interviews that you're regularly doing?
Yeah, it's I've got a YouTube channel and it's free. You can go there and watch. I've got videos on Ted Phillips' early years. I've got Marley Woods, a little video there, some about myself. People always ask, you know, how I got into it and things, and some footage, some film of what we captured in Marley, some of the actual structured crafts, some of the light ball activity I've got up there. And so I just suggest, you know, go to my YouTube channel, just Google my name or go to YouTube and put my name in there and you'll come up on my channel. And you can go to my Facebook page and I've got links to all that, and the Ted Phillips Marley Woods research page on Facebook you can go to. And I put up current things there, activities about Marley and what's going on. So that's the best way right now. You can see what's going on and what I'm up to, and podcasts when I'm on. And last week I was doing 2 podcasts and my computer was taken out on one and my phone lines were taken out on another. So that's not unusual in this business. So I will tell you. So
yeah.
Well, you're a wonderful guest, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm not at all surprised that sometimes your things get taken down. God bless you, sir. Thank you so much for being on the show. Whenever you have any future revelations or anything you stumble upon, let us know, because I'd love to get you back on. We need to have you on the show more often.
It'd be great. And, you know, we've never even touched. I would love to do a show on Moonshaft sometime.
We shall.
It's a greatest story never told.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that next time we're going to hit Moonshaft. We always say we get, like last time we hit it at the end as well. We're like, next time we really are going to hit.
Yeah.
I might just add that's all part of this too, and I'll explain that too. But it's all part of this.
Well, next time Moonshaft it will be, and until we chat to you then, my friend, keep it weird.
Thank you.